I like my country and I like my city, right? It does have a lot of issues, but it's a very nice one. Maybe a big image outside, someone that showcases about Paraguay. Maybe that's what it's missing right now.
This is the capital city of one of the least visited countries in South America. I am in Asunción, Paraguay, and in this video, I'll let you know what there is to see here. More than once as I traveled in Latin America, people would say, "Why do you want to go there?" when I mentioned that I was going to visit Paraguay. It made me worry a bit, thinking that maybe it isn't a place that tourists would find appealing. Let's get started to see if I made a mistake. There is so much to see in Asunción. I'll begin in the city center. The most iconic building here is the government palace. It is often called Palacio de López, which refers to two presidents, Carlos López and his son Francisco, who succeeded him. Construction began under Carlos in 1857. It was completed under Francisco in 1867. It was designed in a neoclassical European style meant to conjure up thoughts of the Palace of Versailles. The building, painted a soft pink color, remains the seat of government and contains the office of the president. There are many nods to history near the government palace and through the city center. Two legislative palace buildings exist. This modern one, which was opened in 2003 and is the site where the work of the parliament happens, and this more historic structure, which dates to the 19th century. It is now known as the Cultural Center of the Republic. The older palace sits adjacent to a sizable plaza. There are several names attached to the square, as I saw signs identifying it as the Plaza of Independence and as the Plaza of the Constitution. I've also seen it referred to as the Plaza de Armas. The space has numerous statues and monuments and officially carries the name Plaza of Independence. Nearby is another building identified as the Ex Casa de la Culture, or House of Culture. Next to it is a plaza with a couple of statues. The most notable is this one, which depicts Francisco López. While he is considered a national hero, this López instigated the War of the Triple Alliance, which was devastating for the country. Paraguay fought Brazil, Argentina, and Uruguay. López died in battle in 1870. Another square is called the Plaza de los Desaparecidos, which memorializes those who have disappeared. It contains a powerful monument. Former dictator Alfredo Stroessner was said to be responsible for the arrest and deportation of thousands, as well as the disappearance of over 400 people. After he was deposed, an artist cut up a statue of the dictator and placed it between two concrete slabs, making it look like the statue was being crushed. It's a fitting tribute to those who suffered under the man's rule. One of the more significant pieces of history is the Independence House and Museum. This 18th century structure is where plans were made to secure the country's freedom from Spanish rule. It was May 14, 1811, when the final push for independence succeeded. Documents, furniture, and artwork within the museum all relate to that date and the men who made it happen. A mural in the yard depicts the note that is essentially Paraguay's Declaration of Independence. An alley beside the home also is significant, as it was the path taken to go confront the Spanish governor. It costs nothing to visit the house. As I do in most places, I took a tour of Asunción soon after I arrived to learn more about the city. Victor was my guide.
Asunción has it has a meaning. It means the ascension of the body and soul to heaven.
We started at the National Pantheon of Heroes. One of the coolest things here was witnessing the changing of the guard, which takes place every half hour. I'd never been able to get this close to one of those ceremonies in the past. The Pantheon of Heroes honors those who fell in wars fought by the country. Founders and other important figures are commemorated. This is also the final resting place of Francisco López and two unknown Paraguayan soldiers. The building is situated on Plaza Juan O'Leary. We stopped by several other sites in rapid fashion on the tour. Located in an attractive building which dates to the 1800s is the Cathedral Pharmacy. It was one of the first such businesses in the city. While it houses displays that recognize the history, it is still a working pharmacy today. There are governmental offices in this building, but the place was constructed for a whole different reason. It was to be a theater, but not a single performance was held here. We stopped into the Historic Center of Asunción, which holds the National Archive. Documents held within the archival system date all the way back to 1534. There was also the Casona de Elisa Lynch. Lynch was an Irish woman who was the partner of Francisco Lopez. This was her mansion in downtown.
This is actually a colonial house, one of the 9 that still remains in the whole city center.
The house is now used by faculty and students of the National University of Asunción. Plaza Uruguay is one of the main squares in the middle of the city. It was named for Uruguay after that country became the first of those involved in the War of the Triple Alliance to return objects that were taken from Paraguay. The statue is of national hero General Jose Artigas. Next to the park is the Central Train Station and Museum. This is a sweet little spot. It holds one of the first locomotives to arrive in Paraguay. There is also the presidential rail car and an old dining car as well. The station operated from the 1860s through to the 1990s. I enjoyed many of the exhibits and relics from the days when train transportation was a big deal in the country. The final stop to mention from the tour is the Municipal Cathedral. There has been a church at this location since the 17th century. This church dates to 1845 and is dedicated to Our Lady of Assumption. I was able to walk inside when I visited, as it was outside of the times devoted to services. My favorite part of downtown was the waterfront. This is called the Costanera, which is a promenade along the Bay of Asunción. As I start every morning with a walk, this was part of my path here in Asunción. This stretches for miles, the views are fantastic, and there's always a great breeze. The path was wide, and although it sat alongside a 4-lane highway, it provided a good place to get away for some exercise. One portion is known as the Paseo de los Turistas, or Tourist Walk. It contains the monument letters I Heart ASU, the abbreviation for the city. There's a cool little spot steps away from that to get good views and experience a water piano. You make sound by pressing the keys. Just about everyone who passes gives it a try. There is a sandy beach between the promenade and the bay. It was a fairly popular site while I was around. Walking back into the city center, you'll again pass the government palace. The Asunción letters are presented there in order for all the images captured with them to include the iconic building in the background. The water of the bay is connected to the river, which lies on the west side of the city. This point is the entrance to the bay. Along this bank, that's the port of Asunción. And in this direction, that's the Paraguay River. On the other bank, that's Argentina. The port of Asunción was not all that busy while I was present, but my guess is that it handles a decent amount of cargo at times. An interesting fact is that Paraguay has the largest navy of any landlocked nation in the world. The Navy patrols the rivers and can access the ocean through Argentina. One of the more colorful districts in the city center is Loma San Geronimo. This is a residential area that looks much different than the rest of downtown. It features street art with murals on a number of its walls. There is also a set of stairs that leads into the neighborhood that sports artwork on the risers. I'll bet this was stunning when the paint was fresh. There was other street art in various places through the city. I was intrigued by this series of monochromatic work, but I never learned anything about the meaning of it. The heart of this place is a mixture. One thing you'll notice is some dilapidated, abandoned buildings. They are impossible to miss. Also, the consensus seems to be that the center is not a place to walk after hours. Not all that long ago, many of the major cities in the U.S. underwent urban decay. The same thing has happened here to some degree. Much like those cities in the US, though, have undergone revitalization and now the downtowns are thriving, I predict that Asunción will follow the same pattern. Some of that revitalization is already taking place. A full city block here has been transformed into something special. This is the Manzana de la Ribera. It combined 9 houses, and along with some new construction, a cultural center emerged. There is an art gallery, a couple of museums, a fantastic interior courtyard, and more. The space even has a small museum of the Paraguayan harp, because that is the country's official musical instrument. To make it all just a little better, the complex contains Cafe Clary. Ever since I first noticed this place, I envision myself sitting up here on the balcony having a cappuccino. I'm not disappointed. This spot is wonderful. It provides the absolute best view of the government palace, which is directly across the street from the terrace. Even if you don't see anything else, visit the cafe for a drink or something to eat. There are some really nice places to eat in the city center. Take the Lido Bar, for instance. Ask just about anyone where you should go for a bite to eat when you're in downtown Asunción, and they'll mention the Lido Bar. I'm having an empanada mandioca y coco con leche, which is coconut with milk. It was a cool spot to grab a little snack. Even in the middle of the afternoon, it was full of people. Empanada mandioca is actually made out of cassava root. Cassava is a little bit like a potato and can be used in many of the same ways. This is absolutely incredible. Just to be clear, the cassava appeared to create the crust, and there was just the most incredible filling that I can't even begin to describe. I think that the first time that I had something that was similar, at least, to coco con leche was in Colombia. Now whenever I see it on the menu, it's one of those things I gravitate towards because it is unbelievably refreshing. Coconut is one of my favorite flavors. If you enjoy it, give one of these drinks a go. The Lido Bar has been in operation since 1953. Not far away, on top of the city, is the Negroni Sky Bar. I stopped in here for a beer. It's my suggestion that you make it here at least once during your visit for sunset. It's stunning from up here. Almost 360-degree views, 15 stories high. It is unbelievably nice. Just look at these views. It had been cloudy all day, but I took a chance that the sun would emerge at just the right time. I couldn't have been more fortunate. I'll leave the city center to point out a few places that are not to be missed. Shopping complexes are prevalent throughout Asunción, and several of them are quite special. This is called the Paseo de Galeria. I don't know if this is what you had in mind when you tuned into a video about Asunción, Paraguay, but I have to say, it surprised me. I had heard that the shopping complexes and malls were impressive, but this far exceeds my expectations. There were numerous floors of shops and an amazing food court. Mall culture in Paraguay is still thriving. For a more established market, there is Mercado Municipal number 4. While the malls are modern, this is definitely old school, and just as much, if not more fun. The market is huge. It seemingly takes up the entire neighborhood, and there are all kinds of items here, from fruits and vegetables to lots and lots of clothing. It reminds me of being in the Medinas in northern Africa when I was in Tunisia. I'll have a little more about the shopping centers, both old and new, in a future video. The Museo del Barrio, or Neighborhood Museum, features mainly indigenous works. It has sometimes been called the Clay Museum, but the pieces aren't limited to that singular medium. The museum was established in 1979. Its contents, however, go all the way back to pre-Columbian times. There are 2 floors of art here, and it's a wide-ranging collection, everything from indigenous to classical to modern. It takes a while to see everything, and it's completely free. The stated purpose of this museum is to highlight the cultural and ethnic diversity of the country. Another collection to take in is the National Museum of Fine Arts. This place was founded over 100 years ago. Ordinarily, it features around 80 pieces out of a total of over 700 paintings, sculptures, and ceramics on hand. There are 6 rooms here at the museum, and at the moment at least, all of them contain these tapestries. The artwork on the walls is fine, but I would not have enjoyed this place nearly as much without these pieces. The juxtaposition of the classic art with the more contemporary tapestries was intriguing. All of Asunción is pretty green, but there are quite a few parks as well. I was not impressed with many of those, but an exception was the Carlos Antonio Lopez Park. From all the ones that I've seen, this is the nicest, most well-kept park in the city, and people are responding. There are a lot of people walking the perimeter trail and finding other ways to enjoy the space. I loved how many people were out in this location. It was quite a difference from many of the other parks I visited in the city. Speaking of the former president, Carlos Lopez, the grounds of his former country home is now the Botanical Garden. The natural areas are quite nice, and there are plenty of them. This attraction, including the garden, a zoo, and a golf course, covers 679 acres. There is not a great deal of signage, either in Spanish or in English, letting you know what you're looking at or where to go to see other things. Still, if you have the time, I would suggest spending an hour or two just coming here and wandering around the grounds. The property was transformed into this garden in 1919. It includes more than 500 species of plants. In one spot, there is a lagoon with a large number of resident alligators. The attraction also contains a small natural history museum. Primarily, that consists of all varieties of animals preserved through taxidermy. I enjoyed the Botanical Garden, but then there was the zoo. It holds dozens of species of animals, some native to the country, others not. I've long been conflicted about zoos, and it's been forever since I've been to one, and this doesn't help. It looks like the animals are well cared for, but most of the enclosures are small. Some of the animals are in there all alone. I wish I hadn't come to this part of the park. I was particularly disturbed by the tigers. There were a large number of them, all in their own cages. I don't know if I will ever go to another zoo. As I mentioned at the beginning, Paraguay is one of the least visited countries on the continent. There is plenty of potential, at least here in Asunción, and there are signs that more people might be discovering this country.
And I see lots of tourists that are not even part of the tour, like walking on the streets. So I would say, yeah, tourism is very big in Paraguay. It's in it, and I think it's gonna grow.
After seeing all of this, you can probably judge for yourself whether I made an error by coming to Paraguay. For the record, I'm pleased with my decision to spend a month here in Asunción. I will have plenty more from this country over the next couple of weeks, everything from the top neighborhoods in the city to the most popular foods in Paraguay. You can only find it here on Old, Alone, and Far From Home. I will see you next time.